Hi there, everyone. Hello and welcome to our July Heritage Live presentation. This one is all about exploring the caboose that we have in Heritage Square. My name is Heather Poussard. I am the operations coordinator here at Mackin House. Before we get started today, I just have a few quick things to go over. First of all, we do apologize if there's any like lagging or the camera quality isn't as good today because we're actually going to be going outside and taking you right inside the caboose. So we figured it was an okay trade-off to get you right inside the action. So forgive us if there's a bit of lag. And just a reminder that we are opening the train station and caboose tomorrow, and it's going to be open Fridays through Mondays for the remainder of the summer. So we welcome you to come on down and check out the train station and caboose for yourself in person. Finally, as always, we'll be doing a little question and answer at the end of the presentation. So if you're on the Zoom webinar, at the bottom, there's a little Q&A icon. You can click that and punch in any questions that you have. I'm also going to be monitoring the Facebook Live. So if you have any questions, as they come up, just type them in as a comment. And then when Tanis is done, we'll go through any questions that you have. So without further ado, I am going to send us outside to our Heritage Manor Tanis and get going. Thanks.
Here we are, caboose number 434553. Here she sits. She's been sitting here for a few years while we were making things ready or getting ourselves organized to make things ready. But before this, her last trip was decades ago. She traveled across the Rockies, across the prairies. She saw snow and heat and all the things in between. And then she was stored temporarily at the Fraser Mills site down the hill from here on the river until her move could be organized. The CN donated it after the Pacific branch of the Canadian Railroad Historical Association promised that it would not be used as a tourism booth, but would be preserved as a caboose, which we have tried to do. So getting this caboose ready to tell its story, though, was no easy task. There was a lot of work involved. I had a lot of help from Keegan and Jesse and Liz, some help from painting from Colin. We scrubbed and scrubbed. We first went into the caboose, and we had no idea that there was a pale blue color below all the grease and the grime that was on there. So that first had to be taken care of. So there was a lot of elbow grease to get the grease off of here. But let's go take a look. So before I go any further, I keep forgetting I'm supposed to say this. Before we go in, I would just like to remind everyone that should you come in to see the caboose for yourself, we are offering one-way tours through the railroad and station and through the caboose due to COVID. And we are also asking that people don't touch anything, just so there was less requirement for sanitization, because over and over sanitizing artifacts is going to be harmful for it. So the less touching, the better. Hopefully things will improve, and down the road you can take a closer look at some of the things. But today I'm going to be opening up some cupboards and showing you inside some of the things in here. I ask that if you do come in personally, don't open the cupboards yourselves. But we'll have tour guides here on site to remind you too. So let's go take a look. So if you do come to see the caboose, this is where your tour will start, at this end of the caboose. So we're going to go up to the platform. So here we are on the caboose platform. And here you can see the brake wheel, which is what the brakeman would have had to use in case of an emergency stop. In the old days, the brakemen had to go between cars or across the top of the cars. Some of the cars had brake wheels up on the top, and they would have to individually turn these brake wheels to bring the caboose to a stop. It was a really dangerous job, and a lot of brakemen lost limbs or their lives or had serious injuries because of falling between cars and other accidents. So I'm going to open the door, but I'm also going to tell you about this thing. From the platform of the train, they would use something called a conductor's hoop. I forgot the name. The conductor's hoop was used to pass messages as the train went through the station. So I'm not going to put it across the steps where Miggy is with the camera, but I'll demonstrate from here. They would put messages on the conductor's hoop, put it out like this. The hoop could then be grabbed easily, the message taken off, or the opposite. They could send messages up to the train. And messages were important for the conductor because they could tell all kinds of things about activity along the track, changes, accidents, landslides, everything that they needed to know. So that's the conductor's hoop. Now let's go in here. At this end of the train, there's a bed where the train workers, the conductor and the brakeman and whoever else happened to be in here would sleep or sit back and relax and read magazines. They had a closet here where they could hang their clothes or store their personal belongings. And this is also where one of the stoves is. This is some of the required things on the list of CPR rail cabooses. They would have had a cast iron frying pan, a coffee percolator, pots and pans, Melmac dishes. All the stoves have a rim so that as the train jostles along, things don't fall off of the top of the stove. This caboose was built at the Angus yards in Montreal. They built a lot of Canada's cabooses and other places. They were approximately, what's the number there? $40,000 to produce this caboose. And they did they did one per day. So that's a lot of work when you look at what's in here. Over here, we have some pictures of a couple of other BC cabooses. Well, this is ours, and then there's another one from the British Columbia Railway. And we have some black and white photos that were given to us by Ian Smith, who's with the Canadian Railroad Historical Association, of when they moved the caboose to this site here at Mackin Park. Another bed would have been situated here, and we've left the top off of that so that you can see that the spaces below the beds were used to store tools. I believe this one also had a third bunk that would have folded down here, clipped in here and that side, so there would be room for 3 people to sleep. We have other signage in here that'll tell you a little bit more about the life of a caboose, but when you come and see it yourself, you can take a more detailed look. There's another closet here that's nothing to see in that one right now. And now we're in the cupola area. You can see that the space below the cupola has been well used for storage area. This one says on it, emergency bedding only, but then below it, it says also air hoses, an axe, and a jacking bar. So we can open that up and let you look inside. It's just a couple of shelves. I put a blanket there just so people can see. We could store a blanket there. On a caboose, there's a lot of energy, stored energy that comes from the rest of the train and rattles the back car. It's like sitting in the back seat of the bus. You get bumped around a lot. So anything that could be recessed or rounded off was, so you can see that this ladder doesn't protrude at all. And the bars up here are rounded so that if you did happen to bump into them, the bruise wouldn't be quite as bad. This cupboard held the logbook. But in there, you can see there are some, maybe you can see it's fairly dark. There's some box shelves there. So anything that was stored on those shelves would stay where it was supposed to. There's nothing much to see in that closet. And now we're going to climb up to the caboose. So there'll be a little bit of a still while both Maggie and I climb up to opposite sides. I'm going to go up this side and Maggie can go up the other. So I'll sit down, pretend I'm a conductor, and sit back. On the other side there, you can see there's an ashtray. They didn't leave out any of the comforts for these guys. And there isn't one on this side. Maybe there was at some point, but there isn't now. This caboose cupola is called an extended vision cupola, and that is because not only does it extend upwards, but it also extends a little bit out beyond the side of the train. So maybe if you pan out that window, you can get an idea of how much of the train you could see from here. And that was important for the conductor because they had to keep an eye out for things like trouble on the tracks or shifting loads or overheating brakes, I'm sorry. And there's a picture there you can see that someone drew of a conductor looking out from the back platform to see just what's going on with the train. But there were different kinds, and we have a little panel here that you can read, talks about the different kinds. There was a turret style, there was a bay window style, and they all had their day in the sun, but the extended vision cupola was one of the better ones for visibility. So down here, you can see this little gizmo here. It's attached to this red rope, and the red rope runs not only through the cupola, but through both ends, the whole length of the caboose, and over to that side as well. That is for emergency braking situations when the conductor deemed it necessary to stop or slow down the train. It didn't matter where he was in the train, he would have access to that brake line. So he could switch this switch here. We also have the letters T here, and I'm told that that probably indicates that this caboose at some time was used in a rail yard in Toronto, probably to carry staff around the rail yards, or possibly as a maintenance of way car to look after different things on the tracks. And now we're going to have another little leg where we climb back down again, and we'll continue on. Oh, and I forgot also to mention here the two-way radio. The two-way radio largely replaced a lot of the need for signals and flares along the train line. But you can see there, Miggy's holding out a green flag, and on this side, there's a white flag as well. So these were used for different signaling. Radio effectively replaced a lot of that and made it a lot easier to communicate between cars with the conductor and the engineer and whoever else needed to know what was going on. I think I've covered everything up here. So we're going to climb down again. When you come to visit the caboose, you're going to be able to go up to the side where Miggy is. This side will be off limits just because it makes life simpler, and the less opportunity to fall, the better. So let's climb down, Miggy. So now in this end of the caboose, we have various different things. We have a breaker panel. I believe this may have been put in after the fact when we got power from some of the local lines. It's got a gauge here. It's called a elapsed time indicator. I believe this might be for the heater, but I have yet to find that out, but I will. And all the blueprints for these cabooses, or caboose, as I like to say, came with consideration of a Dixie cup holder. So all the cabooses had Dixie cup holders. There's also a little thing here to hold different forms. Across the hall is the bathroom. I've made it look like a bathroom. I don't think this is exactly what a caboose bathroom looked like, but it's just to give you the idea of how it was, the spot. You can see inside here, these walls have not been retouched. They've just been cleaned. If you didn't have water for your Dixie cup, you could always use one of the CP Rail's little bottles of natural spring water. We have some other things here that when COVID is over, you're going to be able to look through about different kinds of train cars in the old days. Over here, oh, and I wanted to point this out too. This is an old oil lantern reservoir in its bracket. So before they had electricity, that bracket would have been on the wall in the caboose so that there was no danger of spillage from the oil from the lamp, kerosene, whatever they use. Here is another tool cupboard and a little bit of light in there. And these tool cupboards, you can see they have little blocks placed in to keep the tools from jostling around en route. After the kerosene lighting, this is a battery operated light hanging here on the window that would have been used for signaling and for light as well. Little light over the conductor's desk that still works. Another gauge, a transistorized warning light box, and again, the ashtrays. If you grew up in the 60s and 70s, you'd be quite familiar with that style of ashtray. And again, the teapot and the cup were standard issue for these kinds of cabooses. And up above, you can see there's a stretcher and a stretcher holder. Everybody would have had to have those on board, as well as a first aid kit in case of trouble along the line. And here's a picture of someone being carried on a stretcher in a makeshift ambulance that was fitted to it so that it could travel on the tracks. The conductor's job, he was essentially the boss of the train. So these are some of the forms that he might have had to deal with. So we've got here the Caboose maintenance record card. We've got these train orders here from different dates and places, a clearance form, protection of impassables or slow track. So when you come in, you can look at these. Please, again, don't touch them until things are COVID-free. And over here in the corner was the fusee rack. So this rack was used to hold torpedoes, which were like road flares, and fusees. And the fusee looked like this. And it had little metal clips on the side so that it could be strapped onto the track. So when the train rolled over it, it would explode, and then that would send a loud noise and a flash indicating that something was wrong, and they would be aware of that. They were also used to make signals. These signals here from left to right mean stop, go ahead, and back up. And just before we go out, I'll tell you that here there would have been a second stove. It's been removed. Here you can see the chimney, chimney opening here. And down past or back where the other stove was, I believe they would have had where, similar to where this countertop here is, they would have had a sink with a hot water or with a water reservoir above it so that they would have room to clean their dishes and wash up. And a lot of people personalized their cabooses because they were essentially their home away from home. Usually the same crew was in the same caboose trip after trip after trip. However, there were some called run-through cabooses. And those were cabooses that went farther distances and required a change of crew. So in those cases, the rules were slightly different. There's a picture here of a different caboose interior. And here we are back again at the brake wheel on the opposite side of the caboose. And you can see a picture here of these guys in stormy weather, frantically trying to stop the train. And now we'll go and we'll take a look outside. This assemblage here is known as the truck. The caboose truck is a four-wheeled structure, and it's basically the wheel assembly, but it can be completely removed, and all the components can be removed and disassembled and reassembled. So there's 4 trucks on each caboose, 2 at the front and 2 at the back. If we move along here, you can see here these signs correspond to where the bathroom is inside. This is where they would fill and dump the toilet. If you look up here, you can see the fuel cap for the oil tank. This caboose could carry 100 imperial gallons of oil. Now that's where they would fill the tank. This is the brake valve. And it was located on the side so that a crew person was able to go to the air valve, the brake valve, when the train was stationary to release some of the air. Now we're going to go around the back and take a look at some of this heavy duty stuff. And imagine if you were the brakeman and happened to fall in this mess. You can see how it would be a dangerous job. There's another truck. There's the back one. This is the main air reservoir for the air brake system. The power inside would have been provided by a generator while the caboose was running, and this is the housing for the generator right here. And again, here's the truck. There's different things here. I'm not exactly sure what they are. This says on it defect card, so it must have been someplace to put something. And then we come back around the other side, again with the heavy things on the side. These are massive hooks and things here. And that's our caboose. So we are open for the public starting tomorrow, Fridays to Mondays, for a one-way tour through the caboose. You can come and see it for yourself. And you can also go through Fraser Mills Station, which is across the way from here. if you do come to see the caboose, call in at the station and one of our heritage assistants will help you out with a tour through the caboose. So that's it. If anybody has any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
We do have a few questions for you, Tanis. So
Okay.
the first one is, how would the people on the caboose communicate up to the engine? So if they saw something in the cupola, how would they communicate what they saw?
Okay, so there was a two-way radio there. So in the time that this caboose was running, they would have used a two-way radio. When there were no radios, they would have used signals from flags or flares and lights.
Okay.
I have a piece of, I have an information panel that I'm getting. It's an oversized copy that still hasn't been copied. That gives an explanation of some of the flag signals that could be used.
Cool. We do have a question from the Facebook. How long would a shift be for a conductor or a brakeman?
That's a good question. I would expect the shift would last as long as the trip lasted. I have read that when the conductors and the brakemen arrived at a specific station and were waiting for the train to carry on, there was a place where they could go in the train yards that was also like another second home, and they could go there and have a rest or eat and cook whatever they needed to do, maybe clean up.
Cool.
Good question, and I don't know the exact answer.
Another question from the Facebook page is, why did they stop using cabooses?
Oh, and I forgot to mention that cabooses were phased out in the 80s, I believe, when they developed an electronic device called an end-of-train device. And the end-of-train device is really just, looks like about this big, sat on the last car of the train, and it was able to electronically monitor everything that the men in the caboose were able to monitor.
Awesome.
It was more cost efficient, number one, because it didn't require the production of a caboose, and it also didn't require staffing. So it was a money saver.
Yeah, that makes sense. Our final question is, what kind of food would they make on the caboose?
Oh, well, one of the things that you can read when the COVID thing is over is inside there's a little article to read about caboose cookery. And they cooked whatever they really wanted to cook. And some of the conductors and brakemen were quite proud of their culinary skills. There's a couple of quotes inside that you can read about, I forget what his name was. I think it was Fred. He was very proud of his Java, and he had specific ways that he would cook that. And he expected everybody to do it that way. So the food was whatever they felt like cooking, whatever they had the supplies for. And they would have had a pantry. One of those cupboards in there would have been stocked full with food to cook on the journey.
Oh, awesome. So not very restrictive.
No, not that I know of.
We actually do have one more question from the Facebook page, which is, were they allowed to take any passengers on the caboose?
I don't think so. I'm sure there probably were times when there was exceptions made, but as far as I know, passengers were not part of the caboose rigmarole. Maybe during the Depression, when they had people riding the rails, they'd let the odd hobo in just for a break. I don't know.
Probably. Awesome. Well, that's all the questions that we have. So I think we can pretty much wrap it up.
All right.
All right.
Hope you can come and see the caboose, and just so long, all aboard.
Bye, everyone.